What's up, guys? How's it going? Mr. Allen coming back with another ODFP showcase. In today's ODFP showcase, we're going to be talking about Joseph Stalin, the leader of the Soviet Union from the mid-1920s till his death in 1953. He was noted for ruling the Soviet Union for more than 2 decades, in which he instituted a reign of terror while modernizing Russia and helping to defeat Nazism. He was born on December 18th, 1878 in Gori, Georgia, and changed his name to Joseph Stalin, Stalin in Russian, referring to man of steel. Now, in January of 1924, we're going to see the story really unfold here. We're going to see tens of thousands of people lining up in Moscow's historic Red Square. They come to view the body of Vladimir Lenin, who had died from a stroke, and Communist Party officials, including our boy Joseph Stalin, they wanted to preserve Lenin's body and put it on permanent display. In the end, Lenin's body was displayed for more than 65 years. And by preserving Lenin's body, guys, Stalin wanted to show that he would carry on the goals of the Russian Revolution. Now, as years progressed, though, a power struggle was created between the two communist leaders that followed Lenin. Joseph Stalin, our boy, and the leader and founder of the Red Army, Leon Trotsky. Now, Stalin is going to isolate Trotsky within the Communist Party, eventually stripping him of his membership. And Trotsky's going to respond by later fleeing the Soviet Union in 1929 and settling in Mexico, where he continued to criticize Stalin's rule. In 1940, a half world away, we're going to see Stalin go to the extent of hiring an agent who would go and murder Trotsky very ruthlessly with an ice axe. Yeah, what you see right behind my shoulder. And therefore put an end to that political rivalry that once existed. Stalin took over the Soviet Union as General Secretary in 1922 and ruled ruthlessly until the day he died on October 16, 1953. Now, once in power, Stalin imposed government control over the Soviet Union's economy, therefore creating a command economy. In the past, Russia, according to Stalin, had suffered from economic backwardness. In 1928, he proposed the first of several 5-year plans aimed at building heavy industry, improving transportation, and increasing farm output. He brought all economic activity under the government's control, and the government owned all businesses and distributed all of Russia's resources. Stalin's 5-year plan set high production goals, especially for heavy industry and transportation. And the government is going to push workers and managers to meet these goals by giving bonuses to those who succeeded and punish those who failed. And by between the years of 1928 to 1939, guys, we're going to see industrial progress climb steadily. As a result of the 5-year plans, guys, large factories, hydroelectric power stations, and huge industrial complexes are going to be built here in the Soviet Union. Oil, coal, and steel production grew rapidly, mining expanded, and new railroads were built. Despite the impressive progress that was being seen here in the Soviet Union, living conditions remained very low, and central planning was often inefficient, causing shortages in some areas and surpluses in others. And many managers became so focused on output, and they're going to turn out large quantities of low quality goods. Now, Stalin also is going to bring agriculture under the government control, but at a horrendous cost. The government wanted farmers to produce more grain to feed workers in the cities, as well as hope to sell some grain abroad to earn some extra cha-ching baby money. Stalin ended Lenin's capitalist new economic policy and wanted all peasants to farm on either state-owned farms or collectives, which were large farms owned and operated by peasants as a whole group. On collectives, the government would provide tractors, fertilizers, and better seed, and peasants would even learn new modern farming methods. The state would then set prices and control access to farm supplies. Now, many peasants aren't going to like this, and they're not going to want to give up their land and sell crops at the state's low prices. They resisted collectivization by killing farm animals, destroying tools, and burning crops. Stalin's going to become furious when this happened, and he's going to respond with brutal force. He targeted the kulaks, which were the wealthy farmers of the Soviet Union, and believed they were the ones behind the resistance. He sent the kulaks to labor camps, and thousands were killed or later died from overexhaustion or overwork. And even after the dekulakization, angry peasants resisted here, guys, by growing just enough food to feed themselves. Now this is kind of stupid because in response, the government is going to seize all the grain, purposely leaving the peasants to starve. And in 1932, this ruthless policy combined with poor harvests, and we're going to see basically terrible decisions made by the peasants. This is going to become known as the terror famine. And the terror famine is going to cause between 5 to 8 million people's deaths due to starvation in the Ukraine alone. And it is safe to say that grain production really here in Soviet Russia became very stagnant, and feeding the population of Russia remained a major problem for the Soviet Union. Now, in addition to the terror famine, Stalin wasn't done there. His Communist Party utilized secret police, torture tactics, and violent purges to ensure obedience. All these actions contributed to the totalitarian rule he utilized here in the Soviet Union. Totalitarian rule can be defined as an ideology where all social, economic, and political powers are centered in the government completely. Stalin used totalitarianism to help in tightening his grip over every aspect of Soviet life. Examples of his totalitarian rule included many instances when his secret police spies opened private letters, planted listening devices in people's homes, and even censored any opposing viewpoint. Grumblers or critics were rounded up and sent to gulags, which were a system of labor camps where many people ended up dying. Yeesh. And we are going to see, even with absolute power, Stalin's actually going to become very paranoid. He's going to fear that many people are plotting against him. Rival political leaders were plotting against him at all times. And as a result, in 1934, he launched the Great Purge, in which he cracked down on the old Bolsheviks, which were the party activists from the early days of the revolution. Millions were tried during this point in time, known as the Great Purge. And we are going to see many people go straight to the gulags and not even really have a fair trial. And it's estimated that during this point in time, during the Great Purge, guys, many historians believe that this resulted in over 20 million deaths alone inside the Soviet Union. Now, you might be scratching your head thinking, how can he get away with this? How are people not questioning his rule? At the same time that he was purging any elements of resistance in Soviet society, Stalin also sought to control the hearts and minds of Soviet citizens. He tried to do this by tirelessly distributing propaganda, censoring opposing ideas, and even imposing Russian culture on minorities, as well as replacing religion with communist ideology. As a result of the pro-Stalin state-run propaganda machine, guys, Stalin became what we know as a cult of personality figure, who is at times worshipped with unquestioning, flattering praise. All right? With that in mind, keep in mind that this is going to lead us to the rise of totalitarianism. And we're going to see, in addition to Joseph Stalin in Soviet Russia, we're going to see Adolf Hitler kind of do some similar things here in Nazi Germany, behind my shoulder right here, okay? And this is going to take us to the year of 1939, when Hitler stunned the world by announcing a non-aggression pact with his great enemy, Joseph Stalin. Yes, they were together as one at one point in time in history. Publicly, the Nazi-Soviet pact guys bound Hitler and Stalin to peaceful relations. However, secretly, the two agreed not to fight if the other went to war and to divide up Poland and other parts of Eastern Europe between them. The pact was based not on friendship or respect, but on mutual need. And Hitler feared communism as Stalin feared fascism. And by joining Hitler, Stalin tried to protect the Soviet Union from the threat of war with Germany and grabbed a chance to get land here in Europe. Now, on September 1st, 1939, World War II is going to begin when German forces invaded Poland from the west, and we are going to see Soviet forces invade from the east, therefore splitting Poland into two. Now, as a result of this, Britain and France, they were not okay with this, and this idea of preserving peace had really failed, and they're going to declare war really on Germany later on September 3rd, 1939. Now, in June of 1941, after the failed invasion of Britain, okay, we're going to see Hitler and the Nazis turn to a new target, the Soviet Union. So 2 years after the Nazi-Soviet pact, they're going to invade the Soviet Union to the east. Hitler is going to backstab Stalin and the Soviet Union when he carried out Operation Barbarossa. Hitler unleashed a new blitzkrieg in the Soviet Union and ordered over 3 million men to invade. Initially, Stalin was unprepared and lost 2.5 million soldiers in trying to fend off the German invaders. By autumn of 1941, things weren't looking good for the Soviet Union. The Nazis were poised to take Moscow and Leningrad. However, the German advance soon stalled. Like Napoleon's Grand Army in 1812, Hitler's forces were not prepared for the fury of the general winter. And by early December, temperature plunged below -40 degrees Fahrenheit, resulting in thousands of soldiers to freeze to death. A key turning point in World War II would later occur when the Soviet Russians successfully defended the city of Stalingrad. I think we all know that city, what it's named after, who it's named after. And the Soviets and the Nazi struggle was marked over the bloody control of certain streets, and even in some cases, certain properties and houses. And the tide of World War II really turned in east as the Russians were successful in pushing the Nazis back to Germany. Now, as World War II came to a close, President Franklin Delano Roosevelt of the United States, he passed away, and Stalin was hesitant to trust the new president, Harry Truman. Now, it is important to note that after World War II, guys, the United States of America and the Soviet Union, they emerged as the two superpowers of the world, the two great superpowers. And they had two differing ideologies. Obviously, the United States of America with capitalism, the Soviet Union with communism. Each superpower created alliances to combat one another, all right? We're going to see the United States create NATO, the North American Trade Organization, which was composed of Western European countries in alliance with the United States, and the Soviet Union led the Warsaw Pact, which was composed of Eastern European countries in alliance with the Soviet Union. Now, these two alliances in Europe faced off against each other along what became known as the Iron Curtain, which was championed by my boy, Winston Churchill. All right, and after World War II, the United States, instead of following an isolationist foreign policy like they did after World War I, they adopted what became known as the Truman Doctrine, named after, obviously, President Truman. The Truman Doctrine was centered on the idea of containment, all right? Limiting communism to the areas that were currently under Soviet control and not allowing it to expand over time. And as a result of this stance, the United States and the Soviet Union would embark on a new conflict, which became known as the Cold War. Stalin would gain popularity from his successes during World War II. This is his final legacy. However, his death began to deteriorate here in the 1950s, and after an assassination plot was uncovered, he ordered the head of the secret police to instigate a new purge of the Communist Party. Now, before it could be executed, however, Stalin died on March of 1953. And the big idea you have to remember is that the legacy that he left behind of both death and terror, but he was very, very successful in turning a backward Russia into a world superpower. Stalin's ideologies and ideas were eventually denounced by his successor, Nikita Khrushchev, in 1956, and Khrushchev would adopt that policy, a new policy here in Russia known as de-Stalinization, in which he would close the prison camps that Stalin had once established with the Gulag system and ease the censorship and even called for a peaceful coexistence with the West. All right, that's all I have for this ODFP showcase dealing with Joseph Stalin. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Mr. Allen signing off. I'll see you guys later. Take care.